You mentioned something that I really want to spend some time on for a minute.
Yeah.
All right, because everybody is that. Every parent is thinks they should coach their kids' team better than the coach can. Every employee thinks they should have their boss's job. Every just like you said, every sales rep thinks that they should be taking it. Everything should flow through me, right?
Yep.
So that's a common thing, and then you find out there's a lot more under the hood once you start looking under there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I want to stay there for a minute because, like, one, you handle that with such grace and you recognize it quick, and how much more respect you've acknowledged all the respect that you should have gave somebody in the past. I was the same way, by the way.
Okay.
Talk to me about some of the biggest things that you learned when you mentioned that you were a sales rep and all they do is order the product, right?
Yep.
All right. So it's kind of like this, we were going over this podcast today, how it's, 10 to 12 hours total of staff and thousands of dollars of cost into every single episode. And when people realize that, they treat it different, but they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yep. Yeah. And then our mind works so wild too, because 10, 12 hours, thousands of dollars, it's like, I can do it for less than that. It won't take me that long. But yeah, so ultimately I never planned on being a business owner. It was never in the cards. I didn't grow up in a family that was just loaded with entrepreneurs and money. My dad was military. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. After they got divorced, she got back into the workforce and was working. Sister went to college, got 2 degrees. I went to college twice, dropped out, and when I got into sales, I had my first, 5-figure month. So I made 10 grand in like March of 2016 or something like that.
That's good money back then.
Yeah. And just, I didn't even go back to college. I was in school at the time and just was like, nope, I'm a sales guy for the rest of my life. And then was in automotive sales for about 5 years and met a guy that ran a roofing company. And he had offered me an interview, and I kind of kicked it off. And then a few months later, had a slow month. And I said, let me find out what this roofing sales is. And I wish I had found it way sooner, because selling automotive, you're at the dealership bell to bell. For the guys at the car lots, they know what I'm talking about. So you're bell to bell 5-6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, every holiday, every Saturday, occasionally on Sundays. And so you're always at the office. And it's not like that in roofing and home services. You're out and about, you're meeting people, you're networking, you can be making money golfing, there's all kinds of ways that you can get smart and strategize on how you're going to acquire customers. And my specific one is networking with insurance agents and things like that, because I'm not a big door-to-door guy.
Right.
But a standard sales commission for a roofing sales professional or a home service sales professional is normally 100% commission, and somewhere between 7 to 12% of the total contract price. Sometimes they'll pay that out as a percentage of profit, but overall it comes out to 7 to 12% of the total contract price.
Okay.
And so when I looked at it, I was like, man, I'm having to manage the jobs, because I would set a particular expectation, and the way that I understood the company I was selling for was going to operate, and then they would have materials delivered, a sub crew show up, and it was just the Wild West. And so I wanted to be out there to make sure that everything I told the Hyder family was going to happen during their re-roofing project actually happened. Because I don't care how good your sales process is. If you botch the install, you might not get a bad review, but they're not going to refer you. Some people think that, oh, well, we didn't get a bad review. Well, you didn't get a good one.
Right.
And they're not going to refer you.
Yeah.
So we need a good review and to create a raving fan. And so I started waking up at 4 a.m. and was building Paragon, because I said, man, I'm going to do my own thing. And so I'm saving money. I had a couple $1,000 to my name, and again, waking up at 4, work till 6:30 or 7, get in the shower, head into the office, go sell roofs for the day, go home that night, keep working on stuff. And I got the best piece of business advice from a guy named Pete Lemondola. He owned Victory Lane Auto Sales down in Warner Robins, but he's got his hand in about 20 different businesses, maybe 50 by now.
Okay.
But super knowledgeable guy. And I called him because when I knew him, he had actually bailed me out of jail one time. So I was really excited to tell him about this venture I'd started. And he said, I'm going to give you the best piece of business advice, and I wish somebody had given it to me, is grind your face off until you have $500,000 in the bank. He said, I don't care how long it takes. He said, don't go buy a bunch of trucks. Keep your overhead as low as possible. Stack your money. Once you have 500 grand in the bank, call me and then start to scale the business.
Yeah.
And I said, sounds good, man. I started it with 6 grand and didn't take a bit of it, his advice.
Yeah.
You know, I just started getting the subscriptions, started doing this, started doing that.
Yeah.
And just had way over leveraged myself. But I was a sales guy.
Yeah.
And I could go out and make more sales. And so that was the way that I had justified that. And what they don't tell you is there's a lot of compliance that goes into the back end. That other 20 to 30% pays for a lot of stuff.
That's right.
Because I would say
stuff that allows you not to sell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I would even say keeps you from selling, you know, because, you know, as the owner of Paragon, I would probably say that probably only 25% of my time I'm doing revenue generating activities. The other stuff, I'm sending invoices, I'm doing some stuff in QuickBooks, I'm you know, going through and organizing this, building this spreadsheet, doing this KPI.
Calendar invites, booking stuff, replying to emails.
Oh my gosh, you know, and even like the supplemental stuff. And there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And it was a massive eye-opener to me. So, you know, unless there's roofers out there that have a unique approach that they want to bring to the market or something like that. I mean, the guy that I first started selling roofs for told me, he said, I wish I'd never started this. He said, I wish I would have found a company that was going to pay me on time and install the way that I wanted installed and just be a sales rep, work 35 hours a week, make $250,000 a year, and enjoy life. But he's like, no, I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted big problems. And so that was the biggest thing with me is it was all ego. I could do it. I. When I started working on and becoming the version of myself that God called me to be, I realized where I'm at in this phase of my life, I'm not a number one yet. Not of what I want to be.
Sure.
And so that's kind of what segued us into the acquisition that we're currently working on. It's just I'd gotten in up over my head, and I was afraid. I was ultimately kind of running the company into the ground, but almost by accident.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You know, because I wasn't focusing on the money that was coming into the business and things like that. I was just out doing these things, and then leaned on my coaches, and then was like, oh, yeah, we've got an issue here.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing that we couldn't have ultimately sold our way through, but we had to go through and get systems in place, processes in place, and kind of map out what the customer experience was, because, you know, my first couple years in business, we were just doing the thing. And then when I started hiring, I started realizing the importance of having these processes formalized to where we can replicate the stuff that I know, which is what spawned the Ammons Advantage. So, you know, again, it was just all a place of ego. Was look at this cool stuff that I can do.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible how God will use those experiences to give you a new perspective and then open up new
Yeah.
doors and opportunities.